Welcome to Inside Games, the only gaming show brave enough to play Armored Core a couple of weeks ago in a 100-degree airplane hangar, right, Lawrence?
It was so hot. Oh my gosh. It kind of fit though. It felt like
It did.
felt like we were all in the shit. Out in the sticks, man, trying to maintain our mechs and just getting brutally paddled by not only everything in existence, but even the weather. So yeah.
It was really cool. By the way, I want to say the event was awesome. I actually really enjoyed it. They can't control the weather.
Speaking of heat, what did you think about Armored Core, Bruce? Did you have a good time playing it?
I did. So I've been using this as a way to tell everyone I'm a FromSoft casual fan. I am not the Lawrence Sontag of the world, where Lawrence has been playing Armored Cores for what, a month? I want to say now.
Yeah.
You've been.
My hands are gnarled and broken, Bruce.
You've been getting through the Armored Cores. While I am, I played Dark Souls, I played Bloodborne, I played Sekiro. I haven't beat any of them. I beat Elden Ring. Enjoyed Elden Ring, but I really loved it because it was open world. So they've kind of started to get me into their games a little bit. And Armored Core is not open world, but I did enjoy it because I'm starting to understand the FromSoft matrix a little more.
Yeah, it's like open zone, right? Which is sort of interesting. You're kind of dropped into this big area, and your target is kind of generically over there, which means you can approach it from different angles, which I thought was neat. So there is that almost like scout and execute loop. I remember we were talking with Blessing, and he compared it to Metal Gear Solid 5, which I thought was pretty apt. At least that portion of the game kind of reminded me of like old school Far Cry, where you whip out your binoculars, you're like looking around, you see that there's a gap in the fence, or there's not as many enemies on this side, so you can loop all the way around and infiltrate. I thought that was neat. Choice is what it comes down to, I guess.
It's not on rails, but it's also not open world, and I thought that was very important to note. Because, I mean, yeah, you could do some flanking or whatever, but generally speaking, if you're going to go face up with a boss or a mini-boss, you've got to go toward them. Like, you don't have a choice. The level will funnel you toward a door, and you're going to have to beat the mini-boss at the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some hallways. The hallways are very wide. There was one that was like a huge chasm where you could go on either side. You can kind of climb up any way you chose, and you know there's enemies scattered everywhere. So it makes you feel like you have choice, but yes, it is a level. But it's just kind of an expansion of what a level idea is, which I thought was pretty cool.
You're going to be grinding them over and over. So you're going to go on missions that are not necessarily boss focused, but instead are you're going on these missions to get credits to upgrade your Armored Core. And that's something that I feel like every FromSoft game has. Even Elden Ring, you go to specific areas and you'd have to grind. And generally speaking, I am not crazy about that. That is not my most exciting thing for a video game. I don't normally like to do that. However, the levels in Armored Core were so short and generally pretty simple that I didn't feel like I was getting my ass kicked over and over when just trying to get credits. And in other FromSoft games, I did feel like that, where I'd be like, okay, I gotta grind to get some blood vials or whatever. And I just get my ass beat in, and I'm like, all I'm trying to do is get life. Whereas Armored Core did not feel that way.
Yeah, that's good. There's, I guess the arena is usually there for some chump credits too. We got to play a couple of arena fights in the demo, which was fun. But speaking of the open world and things that make it, or not the open world, excuse me, like the open zone, there is something called Log Hunt in Armored Core 6 that I thought was super cool. Again, kind of shades of Metal Gear. But there are these marked targets in open zones that if you explore around, you can find them in the path to your mission objective. And if you kill them and take their tags, then you can redeem those for rewards and stuff. I'm not quite sure what those rewards are. It could just be pure collectionism. But that's kind of a cool thing. Old Armored Cores would like hide parts around in levels, like in just ghastly places where you have to like fly around the backside of something and land on a hidden platform, that kind of thing. So it's cool that element is still in the game. There's still hidden things in these giant zones, but there's a little more of a framework around them. Like they're marked. It's like a unique fight that you can choose to take or just run away from and come back later.
That's true.
So I thought that was a cool way to add some value to the open zones that they have.
We actually don't have footage of that, or because this is my footage that I had to cut down to 20 minutes. Both Lawrence and I did that, but we captured about 5 hours of it, but we had to cut it down 20 minutes because Bandai Namco would only allow 20 minutes of footage. So I don't have that specific thing, but I think I do know what you're talking about in the sense that if you went after a boss and killed him and got his tags, you could bring the tags back for upgrades to your mech. So they would give you like overall damage upgrades or overall armor upgrades. In addition, there were, like you said, like there were like little arenas where you could get those same upgrades, which I thought were they're skill points. That's what they are, and it's really cool. I thought that was a really cool mechanic.
Yeah, the OS tuning feature where you get chips in the arena, and then you can redeem those for just like character-wide buffs, flat upgrades to health, flat upgrades to damage. That's really, really cool because it makes it feel like the game's gradually getting easier. And I feel like that's really important for games like this.
Yeah.
Because it's going to keep lumping on challenge as it goes, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of challenge, Bruce, what do you think about the difficulty?
It was hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard. This felt as hard as any other FromSoft game that I've played. I don't necessarily think that I was like, oh, this is easier. I think both Lawrence and I were... there was one point, I have footage of this, the tutorial boss, where we were both fighting the tutorial boss and the developers were standing behind us. And they were, like, when we both beat them, they cheered us on. They were like, yeah! And it was actually really cool because I'll always remember that. I thought that was a really fun moment that I've always wanted in a FromSoft game, because you spend an hour beating your head against this boss and you finally beat it, and like you're just like, for me, I'm just like, oh, finally. But this time around when they cheered you on, I got really excited and I was like, oh, I want to play more. Yeah.
You don't hear the applause and fireworks in your head when you finally clear a FromSoft boss?
Not at all, no.
Oh, man.
But I might now, because we had the game directors behind us.
Yeah, that tutorial. So there's a tutorial boss. I don't know if they're going to back off of that, because there is a real like gut check of a tutorial boss.
Yeah, that's true.
It feels like the one that's supposed to kill you, right? But then it just says game over, try again, and you're like, wait a minute, no, that's not how From Software games work. You hit me with that impossible boss and I'm supposed to die. No, not in this one. So you have to have a really solid grasp of the mechanics and maneuvering and all that stuff. And there's another boss later, that big old tank boss that has all the armor on the front.
Whew.
I beat that with like 250 health left.
Yeah.
And it was like a Hail Mary melee. Oh, by the way, all my footage gone. It's all corrupted. So this will just have to be Tales and Legends until the game comes out. But what's cool about that is I could tell, Bruce, you and I had very different builds for that boss.
We did. Yeah, we did.
I was super agile. So I was up in the air. I was boosting around. The gimmick was it was all armored in the front, so you had to shoot him in the back, except he would shoot mines out the back and spin around like a big trolley FromSoft boss. So what I did is I would hover above him and then kind of like hit him with my rifle and then shoot missiles that would curve in behind him while he was running away.
Yeah.
But Bruce, your build was different, right?
I was just like basically a straight tank. So Lawrence is hitting on exactly what I think this game does the best, which is you can customize your armored core to whatever you want. And for me, I was like really curious because generally the way I like to play these games is just throw everything at it. So I stacked my mech with as much firepower as I could. I tried to give it as much health as I could, and I just sit there and just fire at it. Just bang, 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 bang. And that worked. I was able to beat it too. So Lawrence took the more graceful, like anime mech approach, which I love, right? And it's funny because I was watching Lawrence do it, and I could see I saw his build, and I was like, I'm going to try the opposite because I think it's fun. I think it's fun to try that. I just picked away at it, and eventually it took, and honestly, both Lawrence and I did it in around the same amount of time. So it didn't feel like I was at a disadvantage or he was at a disadvantage. It felt the same. And also, I don't have footage of this because I had to cut it out. But I think at one point, Lawrence, you saw me do this. I put tank treads on the mech because I was like, just give it the most health I could possibly give it and see what happens. And it took me through a few levels. It worked a little bit. He could still fly and stuff, but he was just a giant tank with a bunch of weapons, and it worked.
Yeah, Bruce, you kind of sped ran the process of Armored Core, which is giving up on anything fancy and just having a tank with guns stacked everywhere. It's the
Right.
It's the carcinization of Armored Core, really. Everything just turns into a tank with guns everywhere.
Right, exactly. It was cool though. It worked.
Yeah, and it's fun to see that because that's such a core concept of Armored Core. It's cool to see that still very alive and well. There's not like a right answer. There's just different approaches to the problem, and people can make different things work based on how they play. What I'm curious about, Bruce, is you're a keyboard and mouse diehard.
Oh yeah, I am. You bet.
And they didn't have that. We could only play on controller.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is not being able to look around is such a core mechanic in older Armored Core games, or rather the way you have to maneuver to keep facing your target. And turn speed and all that sort of thing are affected by all the various stats of your mech. So now that it's coming to PC, I'm really curious if or how mouse aim is going to affect this game. Because it seems like it's really responsive and snappy.
Yeah.
You would have such an advantage if you can just mouse look to everything and shoot it.
You're right. I think you and I talked about this at the event, but you were saying, because I was like, yeah, I can't wait to have the mouse because I should be able to whip around a little faster than I can with a controller. And you're like, I don't know if they're going to do that. Which they may not. They may not allow you to, like, maybe the mouse sensitivity is just, you just can't adjust it. But yeah, I had to play on controller, and that's, I mean, like, my footage isn't, like the best or anything, but I feel like I would have done better had I been on mouse and keyboard. Now, I know I'm also very weird. I know it's very strange to play a FromSoft game on mouse and keyboard. A lot of people don't do that. I do. I like playing that way. So I'm very interested, and it may almost be a non-starter for me if I'm forced to play with controller on PC. Because I liked the game, and I enjoyed playing with controller, but I don't know that I could play 20 hours of this game on a controller. I'm a more mouse and keyboard person. Now, it's going to be weird, too. The keybinds are always weird, but I get used to those. I played all of Elden Ring. I played 140 hours of Elden Ring on mouse and keyboard. So I will happily do that again with Armored Core as long as they allow me to.
Yeah, I guess that's... I feel like it's most significant with this game because all the other FromSoft PC ports, mouse aim wasn't a huge factor. And in that way, I think it also kind of addresses the question that people have about how much like Souls this game is. It's really not, by the way, because it has 3D movement. So if you're up in the air and boosting around, aim is now super important. Whereas in Souls, you really much you can rely on lock-on because it's kind of a two-dimensional game. So yeah, it's going to be a different experience. Or maybe it'll just be something like Earth Defense Force, how you could aim in a direction, but your stupid tank had to swivel to it before you could shoot.
Oh, yeah.
So it could be something like that, where they bake in the tankiness of your controls based on how the camera swivels around to match where you're pointing it with the mouse. But even still, that's I don't know. I still get people asking about, how Souls-like is it? Well, it's very fast and it's 3D, so it's kind of more like a 3D action combat game. And in fact, there was a boss that had like fireworks of missiles coming out of it.
I have footage of that. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. It was in the trailer too. It was so fun to fight that thing, and it even started feeling like Returnal, like a bullet hell.
It did,
which is nothing like Souls at all. So to me, that visual itself should tell you that this game moves a lot faster, and even having mouse aim, kind of like it really did help Returnal, might help this game a lot for people that I don't know. Armored Core's always had some frustrating controls, so it's interesting to see them start to smooth that out a lot. It's
interesting to hear you say all those things about it, because I'm a FromSoft casual fan, and you've been a FromSoft fan for years. I think it's very much like Dark Souls, in the sense that it feels like the Dark Souls gameplay loop, because I have to go and grind, I have to go back and bang my head against the boss for an hour, and then if I die, I gotta change my build. I do think Armored Core excels at changing your build, though, versus a Dark Souls or an Elden Ring, where you're kind of like, what do I have to do here? Like, it feels very convoluted in those games, but in Armored Core, it doesn't. It's just like, how many credits do you have? Throw it at a big gun, see what happens. That's the way it felt to me. So it feels to me like Dark Souls, but you're right. There is way more verticality. It is a lot faster.
And friendlier. Because you mentioned changing parts and stuff. You can do that at checkpoints now as long as you own the part. And that's awesome. As long as you have it in your roster and you die to a boss, then you can tinker around with what you already own. There were some times at the beginning of the game, though, where I would, obstinately bash away at a boss because I didn't want to replay the beginning of the stage, knowing that I should probably go back and buy some weapons. But that's on me.
I felt exactly the same way. And when I was just streaming this, people were like, I think you can change your equipment at checkpoints. And I was like, oh, can you? Because the reason I didn't know is because we played the first 4 hours of it and it didn't matter. We didn't have any equipment. So we may have bought one other gun, but that's not going to do anything. So I had to go back all the way to the beginning of the stage, buy a bunch of new shit, and be like, okay, I got to bring in way more missiles, this plasma cannon, and I have to make myself faster. And the only way I could do that was starting over and buying new parts. And I don't think you can do that in the middle of a level. I don't think you can buy new parts in the middle of a level.
No, you can't. Yeah, you can just swap out the ones you got. So at some point, you have to swallow your pride and start over. But it is nice that once you invest credits into something, you're basically just unlocking tools to use that you can mix and match to try to beat a boss. So it's still kinder than it used to be, where essentially you would play a whole level, get to the very end of it, figure out that you weren't equipped at all for the random enemy they dropped on you after this like 5-minute level, lose, start the whole thing over again. So they're finding ways to get around that.
Yeah, the checkpoint's great. Yeah, the checkpoint is really, really great. I mean, that's that because you're gonna do that a lot. It's gonna be just like, again, to me, just like Dark Souls, where like you die, you have to go, all right, I gotta walk through the door and walk through the fog and then do it again. That's what you have to do in this game. It's just, honestly, it accelerates that process. Just puts you in front of the boss every time you die, and you're like, okay, do it again.
Yeah, there's Estus now. There's reusable heals. Wasn't really a thing in old Armored Cores. There's a stagger gauge, which also wasn't really a thing. At least maybe not yet.
Oh, wow.
But everything's got stagger gauges now. It kind of fits. Older games had heat, and if you could overheat somebody, then it would blow out their generator, and they wouldn't be able to jet around, and they'd basically be locked to the ground. Kind of the same thing. So it makes sense, and it adds moments. It adds beats to a boss fight, in addition to like segmented health gauges, because some of these bosses definitely have phase 2s and phase 3s that are way, way, way more bananas than it starts off. So that's often fun too, is you can have a build that works great for the first phase, but the second everything gets faster, suddenly you're just eviscerated.
Yep.
So yeah,
that's right.
So that loop's fun.
You were talking about the boss that turns into a bullet hell, and I have a little bit of footage of that. And there's a phase 2 of that boss where like this boss fires, what is it? I mean, it's got to be like 100 projectiles at you at once, right? And you're like, wow, okay, once I've mastered that, you're like, this could be, I've got it. I got it nailed. I brought down the shield. I can dodge those 100 projectiles, no sweat. And then it breaks out this flaming melee. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, just come on. That's just unfair.
Yeah, I was getting some tips from somebody, and they were like, oh, just stay close to him. The missiles won't hit you if you're close. And they're right. The missiles come out and kind of arc into the ground, and they don't really track. And that works perfectly until the melee comes out. And I was like, okay, I'm close to him. All the missiles are missing. Everything's great. And then boom, boom, he just dices me up. And I turn and look at the guy, and he's like, oh, he didn't do that for me. I was like, oh, no. Well. Yeah. But that was the thing that kept getting me. So that's how it goes. That's also kind of the luck of the Souls, is sometimes you just hit the magic buttons and you walk right through a boss
Jesus.
fight. Yeah.
RNGesus. It's funny because this is what I say a lot whenever I'm streaming these games. It's like, once you've mastered the boss and you've mastered the phases and you kind of know the attacks, at that point it's just rhythm and RNG. If he's going to drop those flaming melees on you, or if he's not. And then if he doesn't, you get through it and it's great. But then if he does drop those flaming melees, well, you got to start over.
Well, how you feeling, Bruce? Are you going to play Armored Core? Are you an Armored Core devotee now?
No, I mean, no, not devotee, but I am definitely going to play the game. But I'm really curious about mouse and keyboard. I just don't. I mean, I know I'm one of the 10 people in the world that plays on mouse and keyboard, but it's very strange. And I did like. I'm watching footage of it right now. I did like the missions themselves. Like the bosses are fine, whatever. I don't. I know a lot of people love the bosses in FromSoft games. I don't care. Bosses don't matter to me at all. But the missions themselves are really fun. I really loved flying around with this mech and like checking out like new mini bosses they would throw at you, or different cannons, or like just different ways to get around. I thought that was cool. That was where the fun lies for me in this game.
Yeah, I agree. Pretty much everything was executed really well. I liked there were some minor plot beats in there that just kind of really lean into the comical inhumanity of the setting. There was one where you kill this rookie pilot, and right before he dies, he's just like, oh, I just wanted to be a raven, and then he explodes.
Yeah.
And that's it, mission complete. And then you get your paycheck and go on your way. So that kind of like, yeah, that detachment is still there. That sort of post-apocalyptic fatalism. So yeah, it pretty much just like, it still retained all the elements from old Armored Core, at least the ones that I'm playing. But they're way more approachable, and the production values are really up there. It's just a gorgeous game. All the the fireworks of bullets coming out looked so gorgeous. It looks great in motion. I don't know how they keep doing it, man. FromSoft, who knew? But this game looks great. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, me too. I'm really curious to see how many people they can convert from their Elden Ring, from popularity, really, because Elden Ring sold so many copies. So I'm assuming this will probably be the most popular Armored Core they've ever had.
Oh yeah, by far. It'll be interesting to see the number of people that try to play this game like Elden Ring, because you kind of can if you really want to. You can build like a tanky boy with a shield and like a rifle.
Sure.
But they're gonna make that not work at some point. So it'll be. I'm curious to see how people will handle the process of having to go back to the drawing board and reevaluating your approach.
That's right. I agree.
Well, all right. I guess thanks to Bandai Namco for having us out to the Armored Core event. I got to see a robot stomp on a van, so that was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's really cool. And once again, we want to thank these Inside Games patrons. These are people that contribute to our Patreon every single month to make sure that we are still making news videos. And I'm going to say my patrons love playing FromSoft games on mouse and keyboard. Red N, Zach the Hack, Tito007, and Kyle Abbott. Hey, keep the faith.
They're gonna tear it up once they get the like blade core. They're gonna be slashing around, diving all over the place. My patrons love playing on like that Elmo Speak and Say controller. That's the one.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's their Armored Core of choice. They're out there, but they make it work. Dylan Hiley, Rook, or Captain Coldblood, Spirit Bear, and Baron 5X are wizards.